Hello everyone, I'm Charlie Tolhurst and welcome to the Globetrotter Newscast for today, the 6th of June. We're bringing the Globetrotter Newscast back for you now on weekends. I'm Charlie Tolhurst, your presenter, live on YouTube and Facebook tonight for this podcast. I'm joined by Labour supporter Zach Chambers to round up this week's news. Hello, Zach.
Hi, Charlie. Hello.
Now, Zach, I want to start off with the UK because June the 21st is flying in around a couple of weeks' time. It's supposed to be Freedom Day in this country. However, though, there's been a lot of messages going around from many different people about whether this day will be delayed or not due to the Delta strain of COVID. What do you make of the latest developments on June the 21st?
Oh, wow. Good one, Charlie. Hi, by the way. Yeah, so I think, Charlie, this is interesting because we have seen the first spike of cases, even with vaccines. It's all to do with the Delta variant, which is now its official name, by the way, what the WHO has now called it. So now that it's called, the WHO has defined it as the Delta variant, that's officially known as the Delta variant. That's the Indian variant, basically, the one that came from India. That is, we've learned this morning, it's 40% more transmissible than the Kent variant. Not good, because Kent variant was really spreading like a wildfire. But we have vaccines, though, Charlie. That's the main thing about it. But there has been a spike in cases. Now, when I last checked, Charlie, normally before we had the spike, we were hover around 2,000 so cases.
Yeah, it's gone up slightly.
I think on Friday it's gone up to 6,000, and to that, I think the last couple of hours, it's been reported number 5,341 cases. That's obviously down yesterday, but week on week, if you include that, Charlie, with the last Sunday, that is up significantly, and another 4 deaths, I believe, as well, 28. Now they're lower on. This is a weekend. It's going to be low, Charlie, but it's still. It's still high, 5,341 cases. The deaths are down, although, as I said before, Charlie, there is a lag between deaths and the amount of cases that picked up. So it could be that the deaths, unfortunately, do rise over this, but we don't know how big it will be. Now, another thing about this, Charlie, is obviously how the vaccines work against it, and there's a high degree of confidence that the vaccines are slightly affected, Charlie. They're talking about, I think, 80% efficiency if you of a combined data between Pfizer and AstraZeneca and that lot. But I think AstraZeneca is about 60% effective in the second dose compared to 75. So that is a slight drop. It's where that's the second dose. If you take 2 doses, the first dose, Charlie, seems to be the one that's most affected. The one that seems to be impacted by the Delta variant. So it looks like they may have to bring forward vaccinations for second doses from 12 to 8 weeks for much more groups. Now that's only happening to over 50s at the moment, but I'm sure they're going to have to go probably somewhere with that as well. Now, obviously, how is this going to impact June the 21st? Because the government has 4 tests, cases, hospitals where the vaccines are working, where we're going to be protected by other variants. I have to say, Charlie, I fail to see how we're meeting 2 of them at the moment. If we are going to go ahead of 21st, I've read there's possible options. There could be a delay of up to 3 weeks from what I've read, or there could still be some guidance and potential restrictions, such as face coverings and the guidance from working from home. So we don't know yet, Charlie. We're probably going to we're not going to find out this week.
14th.
We're going to probably find out next week. Yeah, the 14th. That's when we're going to get the big indication of whether, if we are going to be lifting restrictions, what will be lifted. Will it be all of it? Will it only be some of it? Will it be delay? We don't know. But the situation is, I have to say, it's quite serious, Charlie. The scientists are even split on this. You can see public disagreements between SAGE and senior scientists when they go out when they're invited onto show. One scientist is saying this, the other saying that. So there does seem to be a lot of disagreement, Charlie, in government and in the science community as well, Sage, about what should happen with this lifted restriction. Should it go ahead? Should it not? It's a very confusing one. If I'm going to put on a little bet at the most, I think June 21st does go ahead, but with not all restrictions lifted. If to be honest, Charlie, that's it. I think that's where it's heading at the moment. I think the government will want to move and say lift the legal limits, but they may keep the mask recommendations and the stay-at-home guidance, which will be work from home, not stay at home, but work from home. There's a difference between stay at home and work from home.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have, if you're looking at a lockdown again, like January, I don't expect that. This is going to probably be restrictions like work from home where possible, face coverings in certain positions. I mean, Zach, even though the cases are rising, because the vaccine is here now, Matt Hancock, the health secretary, did say that it is breaking that. I think there is beginning to see a breaking the link between hospitalizations and death and from severe disease, which that's encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's basically what Matt Hancock said on the morning broadcast round for various channels this morning. The government have also announced, I see, that our vaccines are being open to under 30s within the next couple of days or so as well. That they'll be presumably prioritised for the Pfizer and Moderna jabs on that one. But that's the thing though, Charlie. These vaccines are having an effect on hospitalizations, on deaths. There has been a slight uptick recently in hospitalizations, although they remain fairly stable at the moment.
Yeah.
And it needs to keep that way. And the good news, Charlie, is the UK passed the 40 million mark in people who've actually been vaccinated in the UK, which is fantastic news. So we're looking at about 70% now of the UK total population being vaccinated, which is brilliant news, Charlie. Now, and I think the effort now needs to be keep jabbing. There may well be some policy changes about when you get second jabs or something. I think the government and the JCVI will probably want to move that a little bit earlier in the future for all groups. And that will probably be necessary. But the effort to jabbing is working, but just this variant is causing more transmission, especially in younger people, Charlie. This is where it's coming from. Younger people that are spreading this variant and cause an uptick. I mean, I can't imagine looking at the bank holiday where everyone's flocked to the beach and everything like that. And, you know, although it's very unlikely you get outdoor transmission, it looks very busy. And you can imagine a lot of activity there in terms of people going out and about, not worrying about jabs and everything because it's a bank holiday and they want to. And it was very hot, by the way. It was very hot, and understandably so. But yeah, I think we need to keep an eye on this week. This week's going to be the crucial week, Charlie, to figure out where we're going on this and what's going to happen, because this is the last. They're going to use every minute of last data to get to make roll-up decisions about what happens on June the 21st.
It is interesting, Zach, isn't it? Because obviously I understand cases are rising, but because we've got vaccines, that will stop people, the majority of people, from going to hospital, especially older people. If you think about it, most of the most vulnerable are now vaccinated. That accounts for 99.9% of deaths, which is great. This variant, the Delta one, according to Tim Spector, who I heard the other day, this is spreading in unvaccinated young people. That is what you said, Zach, a few weeks ago. You said that it was spreading among young people who are unvaccinated. So the message to those people is to get the vaccine when you're offered it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, mate. But getting a vaccine couldn't be more critical now that we've got this variant about. And I have to say, you can argue about whether, the government did all its best to get the to stop the variant, which I don't think it did at all. I think they wasted so much time keeping India off the red list and all that sort of thing. They just wasted so much time. I'll get onto that another day. But yeah, the main thing is that youngsters go to get vaccinated. I want to see the effort like they did put in at Twickenham the other week when they all got didn't have to get booked. They went to Twickenham where they had 15,000 vaccines. We saw young people flocking to their thousands for one day to get it. I want to see that spirit for the next several months now, Charlie. The next 2 or 3 months, because they're going to be critical to getting this virus under control.
Yeah, and also as well, the variant surge testing will still be deployed. So it's very, very important that people are sort of vigilant in when areas where you get surge testing when new variants appear. And speaking of a new variant, Nepal. There's been a strain from Nepal. And Zach, I've been hearing reports with the traffic light system that Portugal now has been moved back to the amber list. And I tell you what, this was done at such short notice, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we this is obviously a body blow to the tourism industry. We had various variants of complaints, including Portugal's own health secretary on this. Health minister, should I say? That's the official terms that they're using there. Portugal health minister and many airline companies, because Portugal was a surprise downgrade from the green list to amber list, and that's the amber list is obviously one where the government is not recommending anybody going on holiday to, and it requires a quarantine of 10 days, 7 if you can easily pay for a quick removal. But yeah, Portugal removed from the green list to amber because there's a new Nepal variant. However, this has not been recognized yet by the WHO. What I've read about this at the moment is that it has that K418K mutation that kind of could evade the vaccines and is obviously more, let's just say, more strainient, more gives it a larger strain. So that's the government's saying of why they did this. It's called it's got an extra mutation called K417N. So that's been seen in the South African variant, which obviously invades part of the vaccine as well. So yeah, it's quite interesting, Charlie. Nevertheless, I imagine there's a very much the tourism industry is completely displeased, as you can imagine, Charlie, with the move to basically remove Portugal from the green list and practically ruining people's holidays there. I think it's a strange one. Obviously, we were going to get an update on Thursday about the who was going to go on the green list, but there's one less country on the green list, and some of these countries, anyway, Charlie, like you can't even travel to them even on the green list because their country not accepting people. So this is a big blow to tourism industry, have a blow to holiday people. There's also disgruntled people, including Ryanair, lots of them. So, yeah, it's not gone down well. Let's just say that, Charlie. It's not gone down well.
It's a big blow to people's summer holidays this year. I mean, at the moment, I hope we can get summer holidays this year if they're done safely. But I'm not sure. I think the traffic light system is absolutely wrecked at the moment. I mean, Gibraltar's the only European destination on the green list. This is going wrong. I think the system is flawed. Something's going to have to be done with the traffic light system. So, please, guys, please, if you are planning on, so just to confirm with Portugal, from early on Tuesday morning, if you come back from Portugal, you have to quarantine and self-isolate for 10 days upon return to the UK, because it will be moving to the amber list. We're going to move on now from COVID-19 in the UK to Formula One now. And Zach, I watched the highlights of the 2021 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. I have to say, what a race this was. And 2 drivers suffered quite huge tyre failures in the race.
Yes, Charlie. Well, first of all, can I just say something? Right, okay. I'm going to just use the term that everybody's using. Well done, Baku. Because that's, once you get one safety car, it just goes off after there. Everyone's like a mad rush. It's like, who's the first dog that can get into the house? But yeah, honestly, Charlie, that was the craziest race of the season. It could have not more twists and turns. It has more twists and turns than Oliver Twist, quite frankly, ever had. But yeah, yeah. What a chaotic race, Charlie. I don't know where to begin. We had Saturday. We had Charles Leclerc on pole. Came out of nowhere to get that pole position, although it's down to pretty much the toe on the back stretch. And then Sunday's race, well, let's start it off like this. Leclerc did start. Unfortunately, his race pace seemed pretty bad. Got overtaken by Lewis Hamilton. And then we got to the first stints where Verstappen finally got rid of Leclerc after starting third. Not the greatest qualifying. A bit disappointing qualifying for Red Bull. And we got to the first stint. Obviously, I don't know who was pulled. It was Mercedes that pulled the trigger with Lewis Hamilton. And Red Bull went flying. They put purple, 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 purple. And they were going fast enough to react that Verstappen could pit and get ahead of Lewis Hamilton to take the next Grand Prix lead.
That's called an undercut, by the way.
Yeah, that's the undercut. And yeah, it's basically that. Perez tried the same thing. I think he had a slightly slow pit stop, which could have even put him ahead of Verstappen, but he got ahead of Hamilton. So Red Bull did masterful strategy, Charlie, of undercutting the Mercedes, putting in purple, 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 purple in every sector. They obviously took inspiration from Lewis Hamilton's hammer time and did it on themselves. And yeah, they then got 1-2. Well, it lasted 1-2 for most of the race. I'll get onto that in a moment. And then we had the first safety car, and it all triggered off from there, Charlie. So Lance Stroll had a bizarre tyre failure on the front stretch. A scary 200-mile-an-hour crash. Pirelli are currently saying that was due to potentially some debris. Although, interesting, Charlie, there was nothing on the data from any of the teams. It just failed on the front stretch dramatically. And that caused the first safety car, Charlie. Now, that closed, interesting as well, Charlie. One of the important factors of that safety car was because he crashed near the pit lane, they had to close the pit lane so nobody could do any free pit stops and get a performance advantage, anything. So that was that. And then after the safety car, it was all looking so well for Red Bull because Perez was holding off Lewis Hamilton. And then we had, honestly, the shock of the race, Charlie, with a few laps to go. Verstappen's tyre, left rear blew, as the same tyre which Lance Stroll's blew up. And yeah, he basically put it into lost it on the front stretch. And we thought, oh God, here we go. This is championship deciding, everything like that. Red flag and everything as well, by the way, because they had to clear up the track. And there's honestly, if you safety card it, then you would finish the race under the safety car as the results were at the time, which would have been, Perez against Hamilton and then presently Vettel as well, considering it, if that was at the time. But obviously, red flag. Now, I was thinking at the time, Charlie, Pirelli are going to have a hell of an investigation. They're going to get slaughtered after this race, Charlie. They're going to absolutely slaughter because the tyres blowing up on the front stretch 200 miles an hour. They're the same hard set of compounds and they're the same tyre. There is some deep questioning to do, Charlie. There's a colossal failure of Pirelli to keep the tyres safe. They had some life in it. There was no indication from the teams or anything like that. But it was an absolute colossal failure from Pirelli, Charlie. No doubt about it. It was dangerous what happened. It was disgraceful, really.
Especially for Max Verstappen. as well. Had a massive blowout.
And you know what? I felt so sorry for him because he basically dominated the race, Charlie. He was on his way. He would have, without the tyre failure, he would have won.
Robbed
Pirelli, he's robbed. And I thought, well, this race is really cruel at this stage. Then we had the red flag. And obviously we had a standing restart. Once we got the red flag, we had a 2-lap shootout. And it was a standing restart, Charlie, with Perez against Hamilton on the front row. So we got to the restart. Hamilton got the better start ahead of Perez. But guess what? What happened? A plot twist, another Oliver Twist moment. Hamilton went off at turn 1. And oh my goodness me, Charlie. Oh my goodness. What an absolute catastrophe error for Lewis Hamilton. That basically put him at the back of the field, really. And he forgot to basically, Charlie, turn off one of the key buttons. He put too much front brake bias in the system. And he forgot to release the button. He pressed the button whilst trying to change the gear. And he kept that front brake bias on too much. He was also having steam hot brakes at the front. That he went off. Now, if he had a successful corner, he could have won that race. So he got 0 points. Verstappen got 0 points. And Perez won for the second time in his career. And I have to say, well done to Perez because he drove fantastically. And I think it was helped as well by Bottas having a really terrible race. No Mercedes points this race, which is a rare sight to see. But nevertheless, great job by Perez because he was a key team player because Red Bull had 2 cars against Hamilton's 1, so they could work together. And it worked. And I have to say, Charlie, Perez is really starting to, let's just say this. They're breaking the trend of second drivers at Red Bull where the second drivers are really terrible and they have to get dropped mid-season or they don't go on to be successful. Perez is changing that at the moment, Charlie. He's on a roll. He's become to get on form. And he's won a race for that team. And that's incredible. That really was incredible. And
that's great.
The driver of the day also as well, Sebastian Vettel, wow, 2nd position. And Pierre Gasly in 3rd, Charlie. What a podium that was. What a podium. What a drive from Vettel, who got driver of the day. Fantastic strategy, by the way, to go on a fresher set of the soft tyres and having really warm tyres so that he could go through the field. It was strategic brilliance. And Gasly, with a stroke of luck, was running quite high anyway. He's had a good run.
Yeah,
and obviously the
very good race.
Hamilton going off and Verstappen crashing. Great podium. It was an absolute fantastic, chaotic race, Charlie. I'll tell you something. Safety cars do a lot of things to Baku. It just sets them all off. And today was just an example, Charlie. It was a great race.
I can say, Zach, it was a fantastic race. And I've actually got some footage to play for you of Max Verstappen's tyre failure during the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Have a listen to this, believe it or not.
Oh, and it's Max Verstappen! Max Verstappen on the main straight, leading this race, now out of this race. Sergio Perez leads from Lewis Hamilton. Sebastian Vettel up into the podium places. We saw Valtteri Bottas back in 2018 lose the Azerbaijan Grand Prix with a tyre failure just a few laps from the end. History's repeated itself in 2021, and this year it's Verstappen.
Just listen to see what happens.
I'll spare a thought for Max Verstappen, who hasn't put a foot wrong today.
Oh, bitter. That's just heartbreak for Red Bull. And another moment from the race that I want to show you now between the 2 Haas drivers of Nikita Mazepin and Mick Schumacher. Have a listen to this.
Wondering whether to dress business
right
casual.
Now, this is Nikita Mazepin and Mick Schumacher almost colliding. Have a listen to this.
Okay, no risk at the start. Don't take any risks. No race start. It's been observed. Everyone is aware. Okay, good job, Mick.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately, there we couldn't get you the footage from that. And Zach, I heard the two Hasses nearly came together as well.
Yes, it was on the last lap actually on the front stretch. Nikita Mazepin nearly did basically did a Kevin Magnussen and nearly threw Mick Schumacher into the wall. Mick Schumacher did throw a bit of gestures and a bit of swearing on the team radio afterwards. Clearly unhappy. It was quite a dangerous move anyway. Nikita Mazepin living up to Nikita Mazepin's name. He had a spin during the middle of the race, actually, I think, as well, Charlie. So, living up to his name, really, of Nikita Mazepin. I honestly, that kid is, I don't know what he is. I would go back to the comment that Jack made a few weeks ago when, but I can't remember what it was called. It was really
ignoring five blue flags. Yeah,
five blue flags. Rich father. Yeah, I'll go back to that comment for reference if you ever need it to happen again.
Yeah, I'm just going to go through the standings now for the event. I'll do top 10. Sergio Perez winning the race with Sebastian Vettel second for Aston Martin. Fantastic drive from him. Third went the way of Pierre Gasly. Fourth, Charles Leclerc Ferrari. Fifth, decent result for Lando Norris after getting a grid penalty in qualifying. Fernando Alonso sixth for Alpine. Great result for him. Yuki Tsunoda finally getting a very solidarity point in seventh. Carlos Sainz eighth. Had a very difficult race, Carlos Sainz Jr. Daniel Ricciardo 10th, and Kimi Raikkonen getting the final point for Alfa Romeo with Antonio Giovinazzi just missing out, but Mercedes both out of the points. Oh, and Zach,
yeah.
Which drivers would you say were your highs and lows of the weekend? Which drivers done the best and which drivers didn't do so well?
Well, I'm going to start with the lows, actually. I think low first from Valtteri Bottas. He barely scraped top 10 and had a mare of a race. Got even passed by Kimi Raikkonen at one point. I think that pretty much sums it up, really. He even nearly got overtaken by George Russell at one point. Although, to be fair, George Russell did retire at the end of the race. Unfortunately, it looks like an issue on his car. I think it was something like that. But yeah, that's the lows. Obviously Mazepin is a low as well. The highs, I have to say, Charlie, are definitely pretty much the whole of the top three. Perez, fantastic drive, held off Hamilton, strategically got it right, put in purple sectors when needed to be. Gasly, just had a good run. He had a really good run. He was right position, right time. Vettel, fantastic strategy. Obviously on the right tyres at the right time. They were fresh soft tyres when needed to be as well. So the top three are definitely definitely the highs on that one. I have to say that, obviously Mazepin the lows. Verstappen, I'll give him a high because he drove such a good race and that tyre ruined it at the lanes. And obviously there's one of the lows as well I'm going to give is Lewis Hamilton, who made a colossal avoidable error at turn one, and it cost him points basically, and it cost him the World Championship lead. It's now 4 points still between Hamilton and Verstappen. Now, if Hamilton won that, he would have been about 19 ahead, something like that, 21 ahead. So, yeah, a very costly error. He was said on the team radio just before the race restarted, it's a sprint. It's marathon, not a sprint. I think those words came to a little bit back to haunt him on today's one in terms of that. Who else is a high, I think, as well, Charlie? Oh, Yuki Tsunoda.
Yuki Tsunoda and Lando. I think Lando Norris done a high as well.
Yes, Lando came back. He had a free place grid penalty because he failed to return to the pit lane when the red flag came at qualifying. But he had a decent race. Yuki Tsunoda, I think he'll be happy with his race because he's got some crucial points today. I think he's been re-energized, Yuki Tsunoda. I think with some training he's helped as well. I think he's been re-energized. and he got some crucial points today. So I think I'll give Tsunoda a high, Norris a high, and I'll Gasly, Vettel, Perez a high, and I'll give lows to I'll give lows to Mazepin and Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. I will give them the lows.
Yeah. Unfortunately, turn 15 caught many victims out on qualifying on Saturday, which Verstappen even went off there. Several drivers, Zach, went off down at turn 15, and that corner's very difficult, very tight left.
Yeah. There was lots of drives. Qualifying was very difficult, Charlie. Literally, one by one, they all decided to have a nice kiss with the barrier. But there was obviously tailwinds happening and stuff like that. Turn 15, they were really struggling at, as you say. And they were basically all crashing into that corner. Ricciardo crashed early in that. Carlos Sainz crashed in qualifying. It's almost looked like someone's decided to paint the track as oil, and well, not literally, because there wasn't any oil, but it's almost like driving on oil, really, when everyone started crashing really in qualifying. But yeah, a chaotic weekend, Charlie.
Yeah, very chaotic. And Formula One will roll on to Paul Ricard in a couple of weeks' time for the French Grand Prix. And that will be taking place at Paul Ricard in France. We're going to move on from Formula One to, NASCAR. NASCAR hasn't actually started, but we do have a race this weekend. That's the Toyota Safe Mark 350 at Sonoma. And Zach, this circuit is a road course, very different to the traditional ovals they go to.
Yeah, it's a road course. The Sonoma is the one that they've been using many years now, as well. There's a race about 9 p.m. UK time, Charlie, as well. I think it's going to be started about there. So it's just under an hour from now that they're going to get underway there. Let's look at the starting lineup if I can get it up here. Here we go.
This is for the Cup Series, by the way.
Yeah, on pole ahead of Chase Elliott and William Byron. Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch 5th, Austin Dillon 6th, Bowman 7th, Harvick 8th, Keselowski 9th, Tyler Reddick 10th, Brian Blaney 12th, as well. I noticed the 38. Who's the 38? Of Anthony Alfredo, who started 20th, is going to the rear because he's had some changes. Right. So the crew chief actually got ejected due to a technical violation. So that's why he's at the back. But yes, Charlie, it's a road course. It's going to be very difficult. I have to say, there's a lot of tight, bendy corners. You're not going to get much fast straight. You're going to have to turn a lot of left, a lot of right in this. So, yeah, 90 laps to do it. I should point out, Xfinity is not at the same race course. It was at Mid-Ohio yesterday, which was run by AJ Allmendinger, from what I read. That went to overtime. That's the NASCAR for this weekend.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So we're going to keep you updated with the NASCAR. Obviously, the Cup Series at Sonoma. We've got a busy next few weeks for the Cup Series, actually. We then go to an All-Stars Open race, which will actually be done at Texas, which I can't wait to see. And even on a Monday as well, we're going to be going racing at Texas, which will be fantastic to hear. But that's next week for the All-Stars race at Texas. So very interesting to see how that gets on. IndyCar return next weekend. And Zach, we're heading to the Motown capital, Detroit, for the Chevrolet.
Yes, Charlie, we are. So we're going. Yeah, it's a double header as well, Charlie. I see. It's the Belly Ice Street Circuit, Michigan. Oh, hang on. Yeah, I've just got to get something.
Roger, Zach's just having some technical difficulties. They'll be back in a minute. So with Chevrolet Grand Prix, we'll be heading to. Sorry,
Charlie, I was getting my tea.
That's fine.
I was getting my tea here. But yes, it's a double header at Detroit. It's been traditionally double header there anyway, Charlie. They do it every year. That's been traditionally a double header there. So yes, it's one of those races that exciting. You've got 2 opportunities for victories this weekend. Actually, next week there's also it's back to back, I believe, Charlie, as well, because next week is Detroit, and then in the following week they're going to go to Road America in Wisconsin. For that race as well, which is the longest on the IndyCar calendar, I believe, as well. Road America. So yeah, very much looking forward to that.
Exciting. 2 big races ahead, and Romain Grosjean and Jimmy Johnson will return for the road and street courses coming up soon. So it's going to be great. That's all the motorsport news this week. From next week for the sports segment, though, we are going to include Euro 2020 because, as you know, on Friday we have the first match, and that is Turkey against Italy, I believe. And Zach, what do you make of this year's Euros?
Wow, I'm looking forward to it. And we're also Charlie, next Sunday is the England game. We're taking on Croatia. We've lost to Croatia before in the semi-finals of the World Cup. Unfortunately, it was 18 that we lost against Croatia. We'll hopefully could come back for that. It's very crucial that we start winning these first couple matches, Charlie, because they're going to be difficult. Croatia, Scotland, oh my word. Isn't it a good time to be a football fan, though, Charlie? It's going to be such a good time to be a football fan. The Euros is one of the best parts of the football in summer, including the World Cup. But we've got games held at Wembley at 20,000 fans capacity, Charlie. It starts Turkey and Italy on Friday. Wales is playing on Saturday. I'm just going to check when I think Scotland are playing at some point as well. Let me get up the fixtures as well. But let me get them up. Turkey playing Italy on Friday. Wales is playing Switzerland on the Saturday. We are playing Croatia on the Sunday. Monday is Scotland's game against the Czech Republic. And then on this the other highlights include France v Germany to end off the first round of fixtures on the 15th of June. So yeah, Turkey, Italy is where it kicks off. I'm really looking forward to it. I love the Euros. The best part of sporting summer. And I'm so looking forward to it. We'll all be cheering on England, and I imagine, Charlie.
And with fans as well.
And with fans, 20,000 at Wembley. I believe it'll get possibly, if we get to the finals, we'll probably get to 50% capacity as well, Charlie. So yeah, it's going to be better for sporting summer coming up this year. It's honestly the best part of it is that.
Yeah, Euro 2020 is going to be coming up. Obviously, these were the delayed Euros because they were due to take place last year, but ultimately were postponed due to the pandemic. But yes. Next Friday, the first match, Turkey versus Italy in Istanbul. First match of the Euros. We'll keep you updated with all the latest news on the Euros on our social media pages, and also next week on the Globetrotter Newscast as well. I'll give you your first Euro 2020 update, running, of course, from the 11th of June to the 11th of July. So the 11th to the 11th, 1 month of football in action. And yeah, you can buy little packs which have all the fixtures, all the group stages, games. You can literally count how many points your team gets and basically write down what team goes through to each round.
Yeah, I love that sort of thing, Charlie, because, I used to actually, when I was at school and everything, I used to do the sort of thing. We used to have a whiteboard and everything and stuff like that of who playing who and, keep track of everything. It's going to be very interesting. When you get to the last couple of days, you're going to really need to be careful of tracking because to see the implication of because third place can decide whether you get through or not. So, yeah, it's good if you got a pack or something, Charlie. Keep interest of it, mate, because follow it all. Make sure you follow the rules. I'm sure there'll be plenty of VAR controversies and everything like that. We all love VAR these days. Some do, some don't. I'm gonna love it when it's in use because then we'll still probably have either celebrate or have a hitty fit over it. But yeah, it's gonna be so fun to take place, Charlie. Big sporting summer. We got the Euros. We got the controversially taking place Olympic Games as well at the end of July and into August as well. Controversial.
And Wimbledon.
And Wimbledon as well, Charlie. And the British Grand Prix. Big sporting summer up ahead for British sports fans. And yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, obviously with the British Grand Prix as well, I believe it's only going to be open to UK citizens due to travel restrictions across much of the UK, with the tough border restrictions there in place. But we'll keep you updated with the British Grand Prix as soon as it gets there. But we're going to move on now, Zach, to something that has been catching my eye over the last few days on the news. And I have to say, the UK channel crossings are starting to get quite rough now. Lots of migrants are crossing the channel. I think last week around 800 migrants crossed the channel, and I'm a little bit concerned what the government are doing on this. There's not really been that much enforcement in the across the channel in Dover.
No, I think Nigel Farage, who I have a very good view on, not in that way, but I have plenty of views on, described Priti Patel as the worst Home Secretary ever. So no change there from Nigel Farage in terms of Home Secretaries and all that sort of thing. To be fair, if Nigel Farage is saying Priti Patel is the worst Home Secretary, then he must be angry. I never heard of Amber Rudd. May have never heard of Theresa May. No, never. Nah. Okay. But yeah, there's still people coming over in their paddies really and crossing the border. The asylum system is due to be shaken up, Charlie. Obviously, if you're the Home Secretary, this can't be soon enough. As well, unfortunately. But yeah, there's still lots of migrants crossing the borders. You said about 800 a week. It's a lot. My concern is, Charlie, as well, is looking at this, is you're probably going to increase that during the summer when everyone just wants, it's warmer weather. Everyone wants just get away. Those fleeing other areas will come here. There may be legitimate asylum coming here. You got to just remember that, Charlie. You got to obviously separate asylum and illegal immigration as well, and safe routes and all that sort of thing. So yeah, but yeah, there's a lot of immigrants crossing our borders, Charlie. No doubt about it. It's one to watch, I would say. I may not be the person to make such a fuss over it as some of the people do, but it is something to watch, I think.
I think it's clear that we need. I'm not going to be rude here. I think there is a lack of press coverage on this. We need to. I think, last year in America they were covering this a lot, but it's sort of stopped again, and it's picking up once again in the summer where people are crossing. And I'm a little bit concerned, Zach, because some of these people who are coming across, they seem like they don't know whether they're going to claim refugee status. That's bad, isn't it?
Well, yeah. And I just want to make the point as well, Charlie. I know you mentioned about, why doesn't the media cover this in America? Well, they did actually cover it for a certain period of time when there was obviously increasing amount of migrants coming in for the US-Mexico border, and they did definitely started increasing coverage. Then I noticed that it was mostly top stories in some areas, but obviously now that the border, what they so-called border crisis, as they seem to claim to it, you debate whether it is a border crisis or not, isn't as covered now, because basically the amount of people being held into these centres and processing facilities actually gone down. There's not much coming across, and there's only localised, activity, and it's seems to be very little. So, yeah. That's why it doesn't get covered. I think if we start to see definitely much more migrants immigrants coming over the US Dover border, and their numbers start increasing, then it's going to warrant some coverage, obviously. I think it gets to when you get a certain point, when there's a certain amount, and then, there is starts to be coverage, and then there start to be voices heard. This ends up normally in a culture war between many wings of whatever party you come from. If you're on the left, you'll say, well, these are decent human beings and are coming over. On the right, you would say, well, these are immigrants, they shouldn't be in our country, and all sort of thing. So it'll just end up turning another culture war if this happens. But yeah, one to watch for, I think.
It is one to watch for, Zach, and I have to say as well, I saw some scenes in America once. These like migrants, apparently, like they've been coming into the like America, for example, and they were like being picked up by these like lorries, and like I mean, I remember that in this country in 2019 there was a news story that broke out that there had been 39 Vietnamese migrants were actually found dead in the back of a refrigerated lorry. Like some of these people did make an attempt to cross the channel, and they get picked up by like drug gangs and people like in these lorries. And I remember that story, and it was quite a horrible one.
Yeah, there is absolutely. If you remember that case when the 39 of them died, basically because they ended up in an office in Grays in Essex. It was quite a big story at the time because they basically been smuggled in by an Irish lorry driver. They died on board. And yeah, it was a tragedy. There are ways to treat migrants. That's not one of them, I have to say. Whatever your complaints of migrants is, that is deeply inhumane. That was human trafficking. That was an example of human trafficking and just basic cruelty to immigrants. Now, whether you agree the principle is a separate matter. I think you need to treat them fairly, even if you disagree with them coming across. I think there's ways to determine whether you are illegally coming across, and whoever should be, if you're not coming across that you shouldn't be, then you obviously should be taking action and return to a country of your own if you're here illegally, basically. But yeah, that was a cool moment. That was a terrible, inhumane event. That didn't look nice.
Well, Zach, I'm now going to play for you an interview with Nigel Farage on Talk Radio about the crisis in the UK channel. Have a listen to this.
Right, Julian. This time last year, I was going out in the channel trying to bring some publicity to this issue, and I predicted 5,000 would cross last year, and that was laughed at, obviously. It turned out to be 8,500. Just to get a sense of perspective, we're headed for over 20,000 this year. That's 20,000 people coming into the country. One of the truths here that Priti Patel will not confront is that unless we deal with the European Human Rights Act, we have got a very, very big problem in returning anybody to France. And yet she never comes clean about it, makes an endless series of statements, gets up at the Tory party conference and talks stuff. Everybody claps and says, isn't she marvellous? At the moment, she's proving to be one of the worst Home Secretaries. All right.
Wow. What can I say? That is a big, big issue. I think clearly, and I mean to Zach to say this as well, I think there needs to be a debate. There needs to be legislation brought in Parliament to help deal with this crisis at the border in Dover.
I think it's something for Nigel Farage to be quite angry about calling Priti Patel the worst Home Secretary. That's very surprising considering Priti Patel's, I would say, is the most conservative Home Secretary that I've seen in quite a long time, Charlie. And he's trying to look quite tough. She's trying to look quite tough on that. But yeah, that's quite something for Nigel Farage to say. You know, I'm surprised. Who would go in her place though? That's the thing. Get all sorted. It seems to be a tradition with Conservative government not finding the field of immigration. Have they find it with these new rules are going to come into place? I don't know. There will still be some issues, obviously, but I don't know. It's a problem that the Conservatives are still battling with.
I think they needed. Do they need a debate on this in Parliament? Maybe. Do they need a motion brought forward potentially?
Well, let's see. It will probably get mentioned if the numbers do keep going up. It will probably be mentioned, but we'll see.
Yeah, on the motion, it would include potentially deploying the Army, the Navy, Air Force was being mentioned as well. There's a few mentions on that legislation that could potentially be coming through. But we know new rules are coming. I just hope that this crisis gets sorted out because I just think the channel crossings at the moment, the scenes I saw the other day. In fact, I'm not gonna bother showing anyone because I think these pictures will be quite intimidating. It's clear that the crisis in the channel is getting higher. But we're going to finish off now. We're going to move on from that. We're going to finish off now with some news from the United States. And Zach, can I say we had some big news coming out from the former president, Donald Trump, who apparently was in North Carolina the other day, holding probably his first rally since leaving the White House. And this rally had lots of remarks in it, didn't it?
Yeah, this is the second rally since leaving the White House. Obviously, the first was the
second one.
The CPAC.
Oh, yeah, CPAC.
Earlier in the year. So basically, the liar in chief basically came back to North Carolina this time. If you haven't seen the story about Trump recently, he's been engaged in this conspiracy theories behind the scenes that he's going to get reinstated in August because he believes on this election fraud business. Obviously, there was none. There's some audits going on that are basically useless and pathetic. He won't get reinstated in August because the Constitution doesn't allow for that sort of thing. So, yeah, he's just been dementiaed behind the scenes. He then obviously spoke at the North Carolina GOP convention yesterday. And I have to say, Charlie, it was quite an interesting sight. And I say that literally it was an interesting sight. I'm going to share it. I'm going to put this up on the screen, actually, if I can, because, yeah, okay. I'm going to try and share the screen. Here we go. I'm going to, basically, because of this, watch, look at Donald Trump's trousers. They are noting that he put his trousers on, and then it's pants in America. He put his trousers on backwards. You can't see a zip or anything like that. So it made himself look like his undercarriage look a bit big or something like that. It was kind of a big sight to see. So he couldn't even get that right. Quite frankly. So yeah, it was a typical car crash for Donald Trump. If you say he's been whinging about infrastructure, China, Anthony Fauci.
I heard about this.
Yeah,
I heard about some emails.
Sort of leaked emails that have leaked of Anthony Fauci from January to May last year. This happened, and this is basically heaven for the Conservatives because they always use emails as an excuse. It's always the emails of the Conservatives that seem obsessed with leaking emails. There's one that's centered that's saying that Farage doesn't believe. Sorry, not Farage. Goodness me. Fauci believed that the start of the virus didn't come from a lab. Now that's still in contention. He said he's open-minded about that. There was he took an email to somebody saying that he didn't believe the lab theory was possible. He then said also another email that masks didn't work, and Conservatives were writing about that. Now I have to say, Charlie, I think they're completely discrediting what's really been said, Charlie. There's nothing really serious in it. Now, for all those who are saying, "Oh, well, he said Martin didn't work. That means he doesn't make it proper. He's stupid. He doesn't sign. He's resign." No, it's because Charlie, at the time he sent that email, nobody knew how masks were effective or anything like that, Charlie. Nobody knew at the time whether masks were effective. So he put the current information at the time was masks was not effective. As you build up more science and data, you'll get an indication whether anything's changed. The mask situation did, but seeing the Conservatives are using it to discredit him, basically because he said that from something that we didn't have no science of. So yeah, I think this is a lot of noise. Resign. They want to distract from their own failings, basically, Charlie. But Trump spoke on that. He spoke on lots of things whilst managing to basically have his trousers on the wrong way. I know there's been allegations that before that he had the trousers on the wrong way with other women, but he had physically had his trousers shown the wrong way.
There was more election talk the other night as well. From November. And he also attacked Biden's policies as well.
It's all, this election stuff is all lies. Yes, of course he would go around attacking Joe Biden's policies. He mentioned infrastructure, saying it's £2.2 billion for a 9% infrastructure package. I think that's slightly misleading based on what I've seen. He's attacked Biden on many things. I didn't even watch the whole speech. Couldn't ask to watch the whole speech, quite frankly, because I knew it would be a lie fest, really, to be fair. But yes, he's on his usual crying runs. One thing that did come out of news, Charlie, is that Laura Trump will not be running for North Carolina Senate this time around. There was rumors that she was going to run for that.
That's Laura. Laura Trump. Yeah,
Laura Trump is not going to be running for Senate in 2022. It's going to be someone else instead. I believe there's a few options already. I believe, but Laura Trump is going to be endorsing someone else. So yeah. That's some news coming out of big news actually came out of the convention last night.
Yeah, obviously we have the midterms next year as well, so that's going to be another thing to keep out for. But we're going to sort of, Zach, how are things going at the moment with the US in terms of their pandemic response on vaccinations? Because they did seem to be slowing down, but then they seem to be picking up, having some fluctuations.
In terms of cases, Charlie, they're at their lowest level since the pandemic has begun, really. Their lowest level since April, I believe, last year. So they're doing extremely well in cases. They're dropping under, I think, 18,000 on a 7-day average, which is excellent news. They've made progress there. There's been a slight slowdown in vaccination this week. That's probably due to the Memorial Day holiday or anything like that, Charlie. That's probably due to holiday weekend. So it looks like they've started to pick up again throughout the week, which is good news. And there's obviously the White House offering incentives to make sure young people get vaccinated and all that sort of thing. So in terms of it's actually a good bag at the moment, Charlie. Although the vaccines have sort of went down a little bit, case numbers are dramatically falling. And that's the main thing, Charlie. Their case numbers and deaths are dramatically falling. It looks like the vaccines have been extremely successful there.
Like they have been here as well, actually. Like don't discredit the UK. I know we have had a bit of an uptick in cases, but that's because we're doing more testing. Now that we've got much bigger testing capacity, we are seeing more cases. But I do you know what? I mean, some people will say cases, it's going to be concerning. But the truth is, with a vaccine, you are cutting deaths and cutting the main hospitalizations. And I think that would enable countries like America and like the UK to lift more restrictions, potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be useful, Charlie, with the lowering cases there. It could well be useful for, potential of, US going up to green list potentially in future travel updates. I can see that happening, actually. I can actually see that happening because the case numbers there are lowering so much. Although, would they want to open up the UK when they have an Indian variant there? I don't know. There'll probably be a bit of doubt about that. I think everyone's going to be looking at us and they think, oh, yeah, there's an Indian variant, then they're probably not going to open up as much. But, yeah. I think US is making some really good progress, Charlie. And I think their model of vaccines and the way they've treated COVID since Biden's coming onto office has been one of the best in the world, really, to be fair, Charlie. I'm not saying that because of my own biases or anything, but it looks like they've actually done a decent job there in America with the vaccine.
In the vaccines terms, great. I think we have done really well as well. I know the government here have had a lot of... I've been critical of the response here. I've not. I thought the response from the UK government has been terrible. I'll say that now. I'm sorry to say that live on air tonight, but we made such a mess of testing last year, Zach, that we were not diagnosing enough people. It was like what we saw in India. They weren't testing enough people. Now that we're testing more people, I think we understand now the true extent of how many people get this thing every day. And I think, would you say, Zach, that the situation in the UK is now more of an endemic than what it was like last year? Is it somewhere where we're shifting to learn to live with this now?
Yes, something like it's definitely shifted to that sort of position, Charlie. It's even with the slightly increased cases, not as big as a spike at the moment. I should say, at the moment, keywords. But we're going to more the endemic sort of stage, of the virus, where basically we're getting most of the the freedoms now, and the government is going to try and manage the virus at a certain level. That's, I think, at the stage where we're at now, in terms of, because of the vaccines. Obviously, I think the vaccine totally changed perception of the government's handling of this. Government's way of thinking of this. So I think that's where we're heading off to. We're definitely in that stage.
So that my final question tonight is: there's been a big Tory rebellion. Tory rebellions have been big during this crisis, and the 21st of June is what I wanted to finish on with the Tory rebellion stuff of this. There has been some news from business leaders that are saying hospitality businesses could be facing potential extinction if these restrictions do not ease. How do you feel for some of these people who are owning some of these hospitality businesses right now?
No, I feel sorry for them. They would love to see all legal restrictions lifted 21st of June. I think it's better that they've actually got customers rather than nothing, because if they had nothing, Charlie, then they would probably be more likely to shut down of anything. I think the support package is obviously going to help. But I think what they got is better than nothing. Obviously, some businesses feel like they need every customer they can to get in the building, and they need a full package to survive. So, yeah, I can understand their point. We will see whether that happens. It may well be that it could happen. Legal limits could get dropped. I could see that technically happening, but yeah, there is going to be a need for business to keep surviving. For the business sector will really want to see restrictions lifted on June 21st.
As well as that, Zach, as well. I mean, I fear for hospitality, high street retailers, sole traders, self-employed. It's going to affect them, and I just hope we can get this. I mean, I think by what we're hearing, mask wearing and some form of social distancing will be remaining after that date. I'll be shocked if the restrictions are lifted. Actually, I would be shocked. I personally want them lifted, but obviously we will not find out till the 14th of June whether this is going to happen. And Zach, I read a tweet the other day from Mark Harper, who really is wanting to get this done. He said the vaccines are effective. And it's clear, Zach, that with the current restrictions like rule of six and that some of these Tory MPs, a lot of them are abolished, are heavily against these restrictions, aren't they? It's starting to be a huge rebellion growing in the UK Parliament now.
Yeah, I imagine there's going to be, if not all restrictions are lifted on the 23rd, there's going to be a little bit of outcry from some backbench, well-known Tory MPs, especially the CRG, the COVID recovery group of MPs, Mark Harper, Steve Baker. Those lot are going to be very desperate to see all restrictions lifted on the 21st, and I think they'll be very disappointed if they get anything but that.
I hope they do. I really hope. I want to see people going out again, but obviously we have to just put up with what we have to put up with. Don't worry, guys. We will still, if they don't get lifted, we're still under what we're under now. And whilst it is very, very close. I mean, I want to see people meeting up again. I want to see friends and family going out with each other. Just getting some of these businesses back open, theatres especially, who have been very hard hit by this pandemic, to see shows with very little crowds. It would be nice to get them back to full capacity very, very soon. But that's all we've got time for this evening on the Globetrotter Newscast. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And we'll see you again next time for another edition of the podcast. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.